All right, here we go. Daf Hey. All right, so we didn't quite finish the topic yesterday, so let's just finish up. So what we were talking about was the connection between not having chametz and not eating chametz, and then from not eating chametz to eating matzah. And the same way there's a mitzvah to eat matzah at night, that means there has to be an isser of having chametz at night as well. So once we see that, so now we know that the word b'yom rishon is not talking about the nights, because the nights we would know anyway that those are not permitted to have any chametz around. Okay, so the Gemara has ve'ema. Ve'ema is 2, 4, 6, 8 lines down from the top, middle of the line. Ve'ema l'rabais leil yudalad labir. Maybe it's coming to tell you that on the night of the 14th, that's when you can burn the chametz. Meaning that maybe you're right. Maybe you don't have chametz around or anything, but maybe on the night of the 14th, that's when you destroy your chametz, not the day before, not the day prior to the 14th, which is how we're making the drasha. The Gemara says no, but Yemksir, the pasuk says during the day. It says on the day, so that means it's daytime. It can't be talking about nighttime. So the Gemara says, okay, maybe it means first thing in the morning. Maybe the whole day of Erev Pesach, not allowed to have chametz, because all the drashas we've been talking about until now have been saying that you can't have chametz in Erev Pesach, and yet we've also been saying that it's only from the 6th hour and on. So maybe it means the whole day you can't have chametz, and where did this whole 6-hour thing come from? But to that the Gemara answers chilek, that the word b'yom rishon, just on the day prior to Pesach, that is when you shouldn't have chametz. You have to get rid of your chametz, and whenever we use the word that's coming to split something. That means that we're splitting the day. So the day prior to Pesach is split, meaning half the day you're allowed to have chametz, half the day you're not allowed to have chametz, and that is the source, at least for now, for this halach. Okay, the Gemara continues. The Debei Rabbi Shmuel Tana, the Academy of Rabbi Shmuel, they taught as follows: Matzinu Yudalid Shenikra Rishon. We find that the 14th is called Rishon. Now, even though Rishon typically means the first, here it means prior. Now, where do we see this? So Rabbi Shmuel's yeshiva, they said as follows. Remember, because the pasuk says, "B'Rishon ba'arba asar yom lachodesh." It says on the Rishon, on the first, or the day prior, which is the 14th day of the month. So we see from here very clearly that Rishon is 14, not 15.
First month.
It
means the first month.
B'Rishon.
The first.
You're right. He's making a drasha. He's making a drasha. That he's drasha. He's saying, you see from here, the Torah puts Rishon and Arba Asar together. So you see that Rishon can mean Arba Asar, means 14th, not 15th. Yes, it's taking it out of context. Okay. So then the Gemara says, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Amar Rishon demeikara mashma. Nachman Yitzchak says that when it says Rishon, it means from prior, meaning not first, but prior. Why? To Amar Kram, because the pasuk says, Harishon Adam Teilah. How were you born before Adam? So I'm talking to Eov over here and saying, were you born before Adam? And here it uses the term Rishon as before. So we see again that Rishon can mean prior. Elameatos, the Gemara asks, and now if that's true, so if Rishon means before, not the first, so then L'kachtan l'chem b'yom Rishon, when the pasuk says on the first day of Sukkot, you should take your lulav and esrog. Hachanami Rishon d'mei kar masha. Maybe you should say it means you take your lulav and esrog erev Sukkot. Maybe it means the day prior, just like it does for chametz. Maybe the day before Sukkot you should be taking your lulav and esrog. So the Gemara says no. Shani hasam over there is different. Because the pasuk says that you should rejoice before Hashem for 7 days. Ma shvi'i l'chag, just like the 7 days are the 7 days from the beginning of the Yom Tiv. So too, the first day is the first day of the Yom Tiv. Okay, so the Gemara is saying that because of the connection between the 7 days, which we know is talking about the Yom Tiv itself, and the first day, therefore we're going to say they're both referring to Yom Tiv itself, not prior. The Gemara says, well, wait a minute. Hachinami, but over here, when it comes to Pesach also, the pasuk says, Ach b'yom rishon tashbisu, that just on the first day you should get rid of your chametz. Shivas yamim matzos techelu, and you should eat chametz for 7 days. So, matzah, you should eat for 7 days, right? So what do we see? We see that the Torah again is comparing the 7 days to the 1 day. So just like by Sukkot, we're saying that that necessarily means that it's talking about the Yom Tov itself. So for Pesach too, it should mean the Yom Tov itself, and that should only be referring to the first day, not the day before. So to that the Gemara says, no, because imkain, if so, Nichtav kar Rishon. The pasuk should have said a Rishon. Ha Rishon lamali. Why does it need to say Ha Rishon, the first? Shmami na l'chalamar. So it must be it's coming to tell us, like we said, meaning that this is referring to at least when it comes to Sukkot, it's referring. I'm sorry, over here when it comes to Pesach, it's referring to the day prior because it says the first instead of saying first. So from there we learn that it's talking about the day prior. Rashi says, wait a minute. So Hasunami Harishon Lamali. Over there too, when it comes to Sukkot, it also says Harishon. It says the first. So you can't differentiate between the two because it says the same wording for both. Visu, and further the Gemara asks another question. Hasam over there by Sukkot, the pasuk says, "V'yam Harishon Shabbasayin, Oviyam Hashmini Shabbasayin." On the first day should be a yontif, and on the eighth day should be a yontif. Ema Rishon D'Meikar Mashma. Then you should say that also means the day prior. So that would mean that the eighth day of Yantif is Yantif, which means Shmini Atzeres is a Yantif day, and then Erev Sukkot should also be a Yantif day, right? And obviously that's not true. So what's going on over here? The Gemara says no. Shani Hasam there is different. Why? To Amakra, because the pasuk says of a Yom Hashmini Shabbasai, that on the eighth day that's going to be a Yantif. Ma Shmini Dechag. Just like the eighth over there is referring to the eighth of the Yantif itself. Afrishan Rishon Dechag. So too, the first day is talking about the first day of the Yantif itself because we're comparing those two. So then we're back to our first question of Harishon Lamali. Why does it need to say Harishon? Because in both cases, it says the extra hey, both for Sukkot and Pesach. So the Gemara says, it's coming to exclude Chol HaMoed, meaning to say that both for Pesach, it speaks out, both for Pesach and Sukkot, the Chol HaMoed is not included, meaning that there's no mitzvah of eating the matzah, and there's no mitzvah of taking lulav and esrog for the other days. I mean, we do today, but that's midrabanan. So it's coming to exclude the days of Chol HaMoed. Mar says, what do you mean Chol HaMoed? You don't need a pasuk to teach me that because Chol HaMoed may rishon u'shmini nafka. The pasuk already said the first day is yantif and the eighth day is yantif, which by definition means that not the other days. The other days are not yantif. Right, so that means it's specifically the first and the eighth. Why would we even think that you would need another pasuk to teach me that it's the days in between are being excluded? So the Gemara says it's trich. No, I would need it. Why? Because I would have thought to say since the pasuk says uva yom hashmini and on the eighth day, so that and is coming to include something else. It's coming to add. Why would it have to say and? It should have said first day is Yantif, the eighth day is Yantif. Why did it say and? It's coming to include something else. I might have thought that even on Chol HaMoed the same halachas would apply. So that's why it needs to tell me the extra hey to say that no, it's specifically the first day and the eighth day, not the days in between. Where it says, well, wait a minute. You're telling me that it says the extra hey to change what I would have thought because it says the extra vav. So just don't say either of them. You don't have the problem. Just don't say the vav and don't put the hey, and everything's good. And we know not Chol HaMoed. You don't need any extra letters. The Gemara says, furthermore, over there it says that on the first day it should be a holiday, and you have to avoid malacha. It's kodesh. Rishon D'Mei Karamasher. You're going to tell me that also means the day before Yantif? So there's obviously a problem here to say that whenever it says Rishon, it means the day before. Because all the other times that we see the word Rishon, I mean, we see that in certain circumstances it can refer to the day before, but how do we know that over here it means the day before? Because when it comes to Sukkot, it clearly doesn't, as we've seen from all these examples. So the Gemara says, you're right, we're gonna change all of this, and we're gonna say as follows. Elahani Shleisha Rishon Mibaile Nechadatanid Be'Rishon. These three Rishons that we say in regards to Pesach and Sukkot, those are necessary for a totally separate drasha. And that is the drasha of the Dvei Rabbi Shmuel. Tan Dvei Rabbi Shmuel, as was taught in the Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel, B'schar Shleisha Rishon, Zachul Shleisha Rishon. Because of the merit of the three mitzvahs that we do that are called Rishon, which are the ones that we just described, so we merited to have three other things happen that are also called Rishon. And what are they? L'hachri Zari Shel Esav, to destroy the descendants of Esav, L'binyan Beis HaMikdash, to build the Beis HaMikdash, L'shmai Shel Mashiach, and for the name of Mashiach. Meaning what? L'hachri Zari Shel Esav, to destroy the descendants of Esav. Where do I see that's called Rishon? The pasuk says, "V'yetzeh Rishon admayni kulei kader seyar." The first one came out and he was all red, full of very hairy, and that is where we see that Esav is called Rishon, and we will merit to overcome that because of the mitzvahs of Sukkot and Pesach. And for the building of the Beis Hamikdash, the pasuk says, "Kisei kavod mare merishon makom mikdashenu," that the throne of glory of Hashem is from the Rishon, is the place of the Beis Hamikdash, and the Rishon here is referring to the Beis Hamikdash. So we see again the second thing that we will get that is called Rishon, and then finally Shmei Mashiach dichsev Rishon letzion hine hino. The first to come to Tzion, behold, he is here, meaning to say the coming of Mashiach has arrived. So here we see that Mashiach is referred to as Rishon. So because of these three things that it says in regards to, there are three mitzvahs that are called Rishon, or three, I shouldn't say mitzvahs. There are three mitzvahs, Pesach and Sukkot, meaning Chametz and Sukkot itself, and then the Daled Minim, Chametz and Matzah, and then the Daled Minim. So because of these three things that are called Rishon, we're going to get those three things. So now, once we're done with all of this, what we're saying is that whenever the Torah says Rishon, typically it's going to be understood as the day before. But in this case, it doesn't. In these three cases, it doesn't, because it's referring to a specific drasha. There's a reason the Torah says Rishon in these cases, not because it's coming to mean prior, but rather it's for these extra drashas. So therefore, we're back to where we started, that we can use the term Rishon to refer to the day prior and not have a... Okay, so that's approach number one. Rava gives us another approach. Rava says, I'm sorry, I just meant to speak out. Taisus does ask that the two Tanna Devei Rabbi Shmuels seem to be contradictory, because this Tanna Devei Rabbi Shmuel that we just read says that Rishon is coming for a separate drasha. The first Tanna Devei Rabbi Shmuel that we said in the beginning of the page was coming for a whole different drasha. So Taisus doesn't answer that, but he does mention that that is a problem. Rava Amar Me'acha, Rava gives us another source. The pasuk says, al chametz dam izivchi. You should not shecht your carbon pesach when you have chametz around. Pesach, the drasha is you should not shecht your carbon pesach, ba'adayin chametz kayim, and you still have chametz anywhere. So what do we see? We see that whenever you're allowed to shech the carbon pesach, you're not allowed to have chametz around. When can you shech the carbon pesach? From chatzais. Why? Why from chatzais? So Taisus speaks out because chatzais is when you can bring the carbon tamid, the second carbon tamid. We bring two carbon tamids every day, one in the morning and one in the evening. Now the evening starts from chatzais. So once you've brought the carbon tamid, the second one, you can then bring the carbon pesach. It's one of the only carbonates that you bring after the second carbon tamid. But once that time has passed, you can bring it. Now Taisus says, well, then you should have a little bit of time after chatzais because it's only the time to do the carbon tamid. But he says it's once the Torah says it, since it's kosher, even if you did it beforehand. So we assume that it means from the time that you're allowed to bring it. So therefore, once we have the prohibition against having chametz around when you're shechting the carbon, and we know you can shech the carbon from midday, so what that means by definition is that you can't have chametz from midday. Very simple. So now the Gemara says, well, maybe it's individualized, maybe it's subjective. Maybe for me, whenever I shech my carbon pesach, which might be 10 hours into the day or 7 hours into the day, maybe that's when I have a personal prohibition against having chametz around, but maybe it's not a set time for everybody. So the Gemara says, no, Zaman Shechita Amar Achmana. The Torah is talking about the time, the general time. Taisus says this is a svara, this is just logical. The Torah is not making it specific. The Torah is giving us an overall rule that once you can shech the carbon pesach, that's when you can't have chametz around anymore. And that would be the source, another source, for having to get rid of the chametz by midday. Tayanami Hachi, we have a brisa that supports this as well. Pasuk says, Ach b'yam harishon tashbisu sarmi b'teicha. Just on the first day, you should get rid of all chametz from your houses. Me'erev yomtiv. This means erev yomtiv, meaning the 14th. To which the brisa asks, "Any ela b'yomtiv atzmai?" Who says maybe that means the first day of yomtiv, like we would have assumed. How do we know it means erev yomtiv? Amud Laimartan, the pasuk says, "Lo yishchat al chametz dam zivchi." You cannot shecht the carbon pesach with chametz. Lo yishchat as a pesach adayin chametz kaim. Do not shecht the carbon pesach when you still have chametz around. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. This is the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. And just keep in mind, the Tanna Devei Rabbi Shmuels have been the sources for the drashas as well. So, lots of interesting things going on here with Rabbi Shmuel. Now, Rabbi Kiva Aimer Ein Etzarech. Rabbi Kiva says it's not necessary. Why? Because the pasuk says that on the first day or the day before, you've got to burn your chametz. Uksiv kamalacha lo yisasu. And the pasuk says you can't do any malacha. Now, if you can't do malacha, matzina da'avar shi'ah malacha. Burning is one of the malachas. You can't do burning on Yantiv. So if you can't burn it on Yantiv, and the Torah says you got to burn it, what's it talking about? Must be the day before Yantiv. That's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yaisi says, and it's no, you don't even need that. Why? Because the pasuk says, just on the first day, you should get rid of all the chametz from your houses. The erev Yantiv, that means the day before. Maybe it means the day of, like we would have assumed. But the pasuk says, it says, and as we learned earlier, that means that we're splitting the day. Now, the Ibi Yantiv Atzmai, if we're talking about the first day of Yantiv itself, and now you're saying we have to split that day, meaning part of the first day of Yantiv you're allowed to have chametz, part of the first day of Yantiv you're not allowed to have chametz. Mishari, is that allowed? We already know that we've connected getting rid of chametz to eating chametz, achilas chametz, achilas matzah, and eating not eating chametz to eating matzah. And we know you have to eat matzah all 7 days, which means you can't have chametz all 7 days. So that must be, by definition, if we're splitting the day, it has to be the day before Pesach, because the day of Pesach is certainly prohibited, and you cannot have any chametz at that point. All right, very good. We'll stop here.